Sheryl. This is what I'm also going to AKA call this besides, one failed swoops. How to lose credibility in 10 days. This is clearly trauma. Like this again, the earlier conversation I was saying where unfortunately the Angel Caitlyn race has gotten divided right down the line. And when that happens, you'll have people that'll cling to things and just dig their heels in. And after a while, it gets kind of embarrassing because you're like, you really don't even have anything to stand on anymore. And this is Sheryl Swoopes. I mean, who, again, is one of the most legendary WNBA and basketball players on the women's side of all time. I mean, men and women's. I mean, Sheryl Swoopes was that one. I mean, the first WNBA player drafted by the Comets. She was an Olympian. She's a multi-time champion. She set almost every record in the world before Caitlyn got there, and maybe some of that plays into it as well. But, I mean, if she's not living proof that, a lot of this tension exists, but also that a lot of great players don't necessarily make great analysts or great coaches. Unfortunately, Sheryl's in that category too, and she's far from the first one. A lot of people think they can just, I have talent, let me walk into it. It's a whole different work, it's a whole different game. But she is really just going off the deep end. And I think it has, again, a lot to do more with not Caitlyn herself, but who Caitlyn represents and who Caitlyn is a lot backed by. Not everybody, but if you're going to find that very Republican, conservative, MAGA-wearing, white power kind of fan, they're going to be on Caitlyn. You know what I mean? So I think even though that's not the majority, there is enough of a part of that fan base there to where I think Sheryl is kind of channeling some energy. And unfortunately, it's misdirected and it's trauma based on, I don't know what's happened in Sheryl's life, but she's really gone after a Caitlyn Clark who, I mean, for all the things I could say about Caitlyn could be one of the biggest assholes in the world. I would never know because all she ever does is say the right thing as far as like in front of a camera. I don't know. She could be a jerk behind the closed doors, although teammates and stuff make me think that that's not really true. But I'm just saying, I mean, she always seems to, never say anything controversial, just kind of keep it pushing, like, hey, I just want to play basketball, respect everybody else, da-da-da-da-da. So it makes it even weirder when you come this hard at her, other than like, man, there seems to be something else behind it here. There seems to be some other issue.
Black people too happy, white people too mad.
But in case you haven't been caught up to all this, so again, Sheryl Swoopes, legend, one of the greatest players to ever exist, and now has her own podcast. She's an analyst and everything else. The first thing that started all this off was when Caitlyn was still in college. Somebody put together a kind of compilation of this. Corey, if you can play this video for me. So let's get everyone caught up. Why am I saying all this? This is what I'm calling Sheryl hating on Caitlyn. Hit play for me here. Again, there's something behind this level.
If Rookie of the Year was picked today, I give it to Angel. Will Caitlyn Clark come into the WNBA and do what she's doing right now? Absolutely not. If you're going to break a record, to me, if it's legitimate, you have to break that record in the same amount of time that player set it.
Okay.
So
She did.
If Kelsey Plum set that record in 4 years, well, Caitlyn should have broke that record in 4 years.
She did.
But because there's a COVID year and then there's another year, you know what I mean? So she's already had an extra year to break that record. So is it truly a broken record? Yeah, that'll go in the record books as Caitlyn Clark is the all-time, whatever it is. I don't even know what the number is, but that's the way it'll be. And I don't think it should be. Let's also talk about how much more experience that gives you over other players coming in, right? So people say, dang, like he or she's killing them, but you have a 25-year-old playing against a 20-year-old. Like, you should be killing them because you've been doing it a lot longer than they have. Clark right now probably takes about 40 shots a game.
No, she doesn't. So, yeah, it was a whole thing, and I mean, not a word of it. And the other thing that's scary, too, to trust her as an analyst, when you say things and you don't have the actual stats with a confidence level that she did, and she's not the first person to do this, that is a giant red flag for me. I get a lot of things wrong, but I try my best to research everything I tell you. She said it with just all the confidence in the world and couldn't have been more wrong about every single fact she tried to state. She tried to say it took her 5 years. It didn't. She did the same time in 4. She tried to say she took 40 shots a game. She only took 22. She tried to say she's 25 years old. She was the same age as everybody else. Literally, not one thing she said was true in that entire statement, but she said it with like just, oh yeah, this 25-year-old taking 40 shots a game and everything else. And not a word of it was true, that she said it with such like, just not even a hint of like, I wonder if I'm wrong about that. I mean, that by itself is scary. But that was just the tip of the iceberg because, they just played the Wings and Sheryl Swoopes was supposed to be on the commentary, and because of even more things that are going on with Sheryl, they had to pull her from the game. I don't know if people caught this. Sheryl Swoopes was absent from her regular duties as a broadcaster at the last Caitlin game against the Dallas Wings this Friday because she has continued to dig her heels in. And she has apologized since that last video. Let me say that. That was from Gilbert's podcast from a while back. And she even put up on X, she put up a tweet of her, showing that she texted Caitlin, said, hey, sorry, I was wrong about literally everything I said. And Caitlin, of course, texted back like, hey, it's cool. You're one of the pioneers. Love you, da-da-da-da. But then she kept going, and it's like, Sheryl, what is going on with you? So in case, again, she had to get pulled because some of the latest things that happened were, she praised Diamond DeShields, the Sky player, after the last game. And to be fair, this is a situation where, there was some flagrant fouls again, and I'm going to show the video on that why, again, the Chicago Sky, Angel Reese's team, continues to be a problem. But there was a reason she tweeted this out, but again, it seemed kind of sympathetic to the team that continues to try to bully and take cheap shots on Caitlin. So in case you don't know what I'm talking about, this someone else put together this compilation here for me. So pop this up, just so you know, and I thought this was a fun stat for anyone thinking that Caitlin doesn't get maybe some excessive treatment here. Hit play for me. As you can see up there, 17% of all flagrant fouls in the entire WNBA this season have been committed on Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark, by herself, has caught 17% of all the flagrant fouls that have been committed in the WNBA this season. What's even more interesting, 80% of that 17% has been committed by the Chicago Sky, Angels team. DeShields just did it again. There's Carter smacking her on the ground. The only one that's not a Sky highlight in this is Wilson, who ends up killing her on a pick. But everything else, Chicago Sky just taking shot after shot after shot. There's the Thomas shot there. Thomas on Caitlin. But again, so 17%, 80% by the Sky. So after DeShields committed another flagrant foul, Swoopes tweets her and puts up, heads up, kid, hate will not win. You're covered and ain't nothing these evil people can do about that. All love for you. Now, I will say as a caveat, that was not just that DeShields was talking about the game, but I guess some people were saying some hurtful things to her on her social media, and she posted that. But again, it seemed like, wow, you're really going out of your way to support the Chicago Sky team as she's done before, hugging Angel Reese. So again, there seems to be something else behind it. So that wasn't just all, though. In her last podcast, Queens of the Court, and this one was truly bananas. So Sheryl had her podcast, Queens of the Court, and she's talking about the Indiana Fever specifically and how they're doing really well. It was the part that everyone paid attention to, and Stephen A. Smith ended up responding to this. She talks about her recent improvements for the Fever. Again, 6-1 their last 7, everything else. And she credits Aaliyah, she credits Kelsey, and she credits Lexi Hull. And in her entire conversation did not bring up Caitlin Clark. Every incident by itself, you can say isolated doesn't mean shit. But when you're already on the I don't really like Caitlin train, I'm saying she takes 40 shots a game. She's 25 years old. And, I seem to be, very supportive towards people that love to flagrant foul her over and over and over. And then you add that on with, I'm going to give Indiana Fever credit. They're doing great. Thanks to Aaliyah, Kelsey, and Lexi Hull. And I'm not going to mention Caitlin Clark's name. I got to start putting shit together. I got to start putting puzzle pieces together. If you can pop this picture up here for me. This is what this, kind of give you an idea like, oh, you think I'm being too whatever. And not to mention the shirt she's wearing, in the podcast on Gilbert. Again, a lot of things seem to be coming together. But if you can pop up, it's the previous one before that. If I was wearing a shirt that said All American Only and I had, me urinating on the French flag, and I'm talking about the San Antonio Spurs and how great they're doing, and I'm being like, man, Keldon Johnson, Jeremy Sohan, they're doing so great. San Antonio Spurs are doing so well right now. I got to give a lot of credit to San Antonio Spurs thanks to, Johnson and Sohan. And people are like, well, what about, Victor Wembanyama? And I'm like, who? It wouldn't take you more than 2 seconds to go, dude, okay, clearly you have something against French people. Like, what are you doing here? What are we getting into? How can you talk about the Spurs and talk about how good they're doing, and you're talking about all these little American dudes, but yet the 7'3" rookie of the year who just happens to be French while you're wearing a shirt of you urinating on the French just seems to be a problem with you. I'm like, what do you mean? Are you crazy? How dare you say that? what do you want me to say? That I can't put those pieces together? That you clearly seem to have some specific issue with her if you talk about how good the Indiana Fever are and you somehow leave her name omitted from the entire conversation when, again, she's on like MVP levels right now. You got to stop with the nonsense. And so Stephen A. Smith did a Stephen A. Smith thing and called her out for it. But then she tweeted out, you can talk about whomever and whatever you want in your podcast, correct? So why can't I? Also, did you listen to the entire episode? Nope. I have a personal relationship with these players, and they deserve recognition as well. Fair enough. I just gave love to Kelsey Mitchell. And everyone that said, though, that listened to the podcast, you didn't, by the way, ever bring up Caitlin Clark's name. So that was a kind of misdirection there. But it's besides the point. Like, that's just weird. That's weird that you would bring up how good the Fever are doing and not say her name in the same way it would be weird for me to bring up the San Antonio Spurs and how good they're doing and not be able to bring up Victor Wembanyama's name just when I happen to be wearing a shirt that seems like I don't like French people. I don't know what to tell you. So, Caitlin's doing her thing, continues to break every record in the world. First 30-point, 12-assist game, WNBA history. Just recently, first rookie with 30, 10 in a game. 12 double-doubles. That now breaks the WNBA record for most double-doubles by a guard, most three-pointers made by a rookie. First WNBA player, 15 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 6 consecutive. It's 10th straight game with 15 points and 5 rebounds. We'll put you only with Diana Taurasi's the only players to ever do it. Da-da-da-da-da. So Caitlin's not worried about it. Caitlin's keeping it pushing. And I don't really know Sheryl Swoopes, and it doesn't really matter in my life whether, she does her podcast or not. But it is interesting, and she has kind of become the representative. And so if you can pop this picture up here for me, like, my only question, if I can ever get a hand, like, who hurt you, man? Like, why are you in this blind hate rage over this? It seems some sort of other reason behind it. There seems to be some other motivation, again, between the shirt and not being able to say her name as you're talking about them and seeming to praise the Sky specifically. I got to start putting stuff together. There's clearly some other trauma or frustration that you have with Caitlin fans, and I get it. I know which fans you're talking about, but not everybody is that, and Caitlin's not that. And it's really hurting you more than it's hurting anyone else at this point because, again, anything she else says basketball-related, I'm going to take with a grain of salt. Like, when you ignore an elephant this big in the room and act like it's not there and spit wrong facts and everything else, and then you've been told you got it wrong, and you continue to dig in your heels to the point they wouldn't let you do the game you're supposed to be at because they're like, bro, we can't let her on the microphone. She clearly has a problem with this girl. She's going to say something, or at least we have a fear of it. At this point, you're just hurting your own credibility. So I love Angel Reese. I respect everything Sheryl's done in her career, but this is a very good lesson to learn of acceptance of, like, hey, sometimes when you cheer for somebody, things don't go your way. Sometimes you say things wrong. It's okay to say you're wrong and apologize. Sometimes you need to be able to take a step back and go, am I hurting them by this? Am I actually doing anything productive, or am I just hurting myself? Sheryl Swoopes, I hope you can kind of, it's coming to a head. Everyone's been talking about this. Find some peace with this, man. Just again, let it go. I'm going to play it again. It's okay. Me and Corey are vibing to this. It's, Angels, they both got long careers. Angels can kick her ass for the next 9 seasons. We don't know. Last thing.